It was a calm and bright morning on a small farm that rested at the edge of a green forest. The sound of birds singing mixed with the gentle wind that passed through the tall grass. Inside a wooden shed behind the farmhouse, a loyal German shepherd named Luna lay curled up beside her newborn puppies. She had given birth only a few days ago, and her whole world now revolved around the 5 tiny lives breathing beside her. Their soft whimpers filled the shed as Luna gently nudged them closer to her warm fur. Her owner, Ethan, a young man in his late 20s, had always cared deeply for animals. He lived alone on the farm after his parents moved to the city, and his animals were his family. He had rescued Luna 2 years earlier after finding her injured on a roadside. Since then, she had become his most loyal companion, helping him herd cattle, guard the property, and even alert him when someone approached the gate. Ethan often said Luna wasn't just a dog. She was his partner and his friend. That morning, as the sun climbed higher, Ethan stepped out of the farmhouse with a cup of coffee. He smiled as he heard the faint barking from the shed. Luna's bark was sharp but playful, like a greeting. He walked across the small yard and opened the shed door quietly. Inside, the smell of hay and fresh straw filled the air. Luna lifted her head, her brown eyes meeting his. She wagged her tail slowly, careful not to wake her sleeping puppies. Ethan crouched down and gently stroked her head. "Good girl," he whispered. "You're doing great." He looked at the puppies, tiny, warm, and helpless. Their fur was still thin, their eyes barely open. "You're gonna have your hands full soon," he joked softly, though Luna tilted her head as if she understood every word. He placed a fresh bowl of water and a dish of food nearby. Luna waited patiently until he nodded, then started eating. Ethan stayed there for a few minutes, watching her with quiet pride. The morning light came through the gaps in the wooden wall, forming golden lines across the straw. Everything felt peaceful and right, but then Luna suddenly stopped eating. Her ears twitched. Her body stiffened as her eyes turned toward the open window. A low growl formed in her throat. Ethan followed her gaze but saw nothing, only trees and sunlight outside. "What is it, girl?" he asked, standing up. Luna barked once sharply. She took a few steps toward the door, sniffing the air. Ethan walked outside, shading his eyes from the light. The forest stood still, silent except for the rustling leaves. It wasn't unusual for Luna to bark at foxes or wild birds that wandered too close. Still, something about her posture made him pause. She was tense, her tail straight, her gaze fixed on the shadows near the tree line. "Probably a raccoon," Ethan said aloud, trying to reassure himself. He patted her head and closed the shed door behind him before heading back toward the house. Luna stayed by the doorway for a while, ears still twitching, before returning to her puppies. Hours passed. The sun rose high and the heat thickened. Ethan went about his chores, watering the garden, fixing a fence, and preparing to drive into town for supplies. He checked on Luna again before leaving. She was resting quietly, her puppies nursing. Ethan smiled. "I'll be back soon, girl," he said. "Be good." He locked the main gate, started his truck, and drove off down the dirt road that cut through the open fields. Inside the shed, everything seemed normal again. The puppies had fallen asleep, their tiny paws twitching as they dreamed. Luna stretched out on the straw, closing her eyes but keeping her ears alert, listening to every small sound. The wind moved gently through the cracks in the wall, carrying the smell of grass and soil. But deep inside the forest, something else was moving, something slow and heavy, sliding across the dry leaves. It had been living there for months, hidden from people. It had no natural enemies, no fear, and no understanding of the danger it posed. Its scales glistened in the sunlight filtering through the branches. It was a giant python, several meters long, silent and patient. It had survived on small animals, but food had grown scarce near the forest edge. The smell of the farm had drawn it closer day by day. That afternoon, the air was thick and quiet. Even the birds seemed to have gone still. Luna lifted her head again, sensing something. She sniffed the air, ears pricked, eyes narrowing. The forest smell was stronger now, sharp, earthy, strange. She stood and paced near the doorway, her paws silent on the straw. Her puppies whimpered, unaware of the tension in the air. The python had reached the edge of the yard. Its tongue flicked in and out as it tasted the warm scent of animals. Slowly, it slithered toward the shed, its massive body moving soundlessly over the ground. The door was slightly open, just enough for it to slip through. Luna's instincts screamed at her. She backed up, barking loudly, her teeth bared. The sudden noise startled the sleeping puppies, who began to cry softly. But the snake didn't stop. It lifted its head, its unblinking eyes fixed on her. At that very moment, somewhere down the road, Ethan stopped at a small store to buy feed and a few tools. He was humming a tune, unaware of what was happening back home. Back at the farm, Luna moved between the snake and her puppies, her body low, her growls deep. She had faced danger before, wild animals, strangers, storms, but nothing like this. The snake's body glided closer, slow but certain. Luna barked again, louder this time, hoping someone would hear. But no one did. The python paused for a moment, then began to coil. Its scales brushed against the wooden floor, making a faint scraping sound. Luna lunged forward, snapping at its head. Her teeth caught the edge of its skin, but it was like biting stone. The snake jerked back, then struck forward in a blur of motion. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the leaves. The farm stood silent except for one sound, the echo of a desperate bark that faded into the warm afternoon air. And somewhere far away, Ethan felt a sudden chill, an uneasy feeling he couldn't explain. He looked toward the horizon where his farm stood and whispered softly, "Hope you're okay, girl." The sun dipped slightly in the sky, throwing long shadows across the fields. Back in the shed, the battle between instinct and nature had begun, a mother's courage against a predator's hunger. No one knew yet what was happening inside that quiet wooden shed, but the farm would never forget what was about to unfold. The sun was high and hot when Ethan's truck disappeared down the dirt road. The farm stood quiet, with only the sound of insects buzzing in the still air. Inside the shed, Luna's puppies slept peacefully, huddled close to one another on the straw floor. The smell of hay and milk filled the space, calm and safe, but Luna was not resting. Her ears twitched again and again. Something felt wrong. The forest outside seemed too silent. No birds sang, no wind stirred. It was as if the world was holding its breath. Luna lifted her head and sniffed the air. A strange, heavy scent drifted through the small cracks in the wood. Her tail stiffened. She stood up slowly, muscles tense, and stepped toward the doorway. Her sharp eyes scanned the edge of the field. Everything looked still, but her instincts warned her otherwise. Then from the dark line of trees, a movement. Slow, almost invisible. A long shadow slid across the grass, blending perfectly with the ground. The giant python, thick as a man's leg and longer than the shed itself, had finally crossed the open field. Its smooth scales shone faintly under the sunlight. It moved silently, its head lifted slightly, its tongue flicking in and out, tasting the air. The python had been watching the farm for days. It had fed on small animals before, but it had grown hungry again. The warmth of the shed and the smell of newborn creatures had drawn it in. It moved without sound, its body coiling and uncoiling, leaving a faint trail in the dust. Inside, Luna began to growl, deep and low. Her puppies stirred at the sound, squeaking softly. She turned and barked once, sharply, as if telling them to stay quiet. Then she moved closer to the doorway, her eyes glowing with alertness. The snake reached the wooden steps of the shed. Its body moved with eerie grace, each muscle sliding under the patterned scales. It raised its head, pressing it against the small open gap of the door. The wood creaked lightly as it began to push through. Luna barked again, louder now, the sound echoing across the quiet field. If Ethan had been there, he would have come running. But there was no one. Only the forest, the empty farmhouse, and the mother dog standing between her puppies and the shadow that entered her world. The python's head slid through the opening, its tongue flicking, tasting the air. Luna growled fiercely, her fur standing up. She lunged forward, snapping her jaws at the snake's face. Her teeth grazed its skin, leaving a shallow mark. The python recoiled for a second, then surged forward with frightening speed. Its head shot past her, its body coiling in a blur. Luna barked again and bit down hard on the snake's neck. The taste of dust and earth filled her mouth, but she refused to let go. The snake twisted, wrapping its body around her midsection. The sound of its scales rubbing against the wooden floor filled the air. Luna growled and kicked, her claws scraping the ground. She was strong, but the python was heavier, larger, and built to crush. Her puppies cried out from the corner, their small voices helpless. Luna's eyes turned toward them for just a second, full of fear and love. That single second was enough for the python to tighten its grip. The air grew thick with struggle. Dust rose around them as the snake's body squeezed harder. Luna let out a muffled bark, trying to push against the pressure. She could feel the strength of the coils pressing into her ribs, stealing her breath. Still, she refused to surrender. Her teeth stayed locked on the snake's neck. Outside, the wind blew softly through the grass, carrying the faint sound of barking toward the open fields. But no one heard. Ethan was still miles away, and the neighbors were out tending their crops. Inside the shed, the battle of life and instinct continued. Luna's muscles strained, every part of her body fighting to stay upright. She twisted and tried to free one paw, digging her claws into the floor to gain leverage. The snake hissed quietly, its tongue flicking, its black eyes unblinking. It was patient, sure of its strength. Minutes passed like hours. Luna's breathing grew heavier, but her spirit did not fade. She moved suddenly, throwing her weight to one side. The snake's coils slipped slightly, and she pulled herself halfway free. She gasped for air, then bit again, harder this time. The python jerked, surprised by her strength, but it was relentless. It coiled again, this time higher around her chest. The pressure returned, stronger than before. Luna's legs trembled as she struggled to keep her balance. The world seemed to spin for a moment, the edges of her vision dimming. Still, she didn't stop. She barked again, the sound weak but defiant. Her puppies, hearing their mother's cries, tried to crawl toward her, their tiny bodies trembling. Luna turned her eyes toward them, her heart breaking. She barked softly, as if telling them to stay back, to hide. Her instincts were clear: protect them no matter what. Outside, a few crows circled overhead, their cries echoing across the empty field. The shed stood small and still, holding the weight of a silent struggle that no one could see. The snake began to move its head closer to Luna's face, its body still coiled tight. Luna's growl deepened. She managed to push against the ground again, dragging both herself and the snake a few inches across the floor. Her strength came from something deeper than muscle, something born of love and instinct. She snapped her jaws again and caught the snake's lower body, biting and twisting. The python hissed and loosened slightly, then tightened again in anger. The floor creaked under their weight. Straw scattered in every direction. The battle went on for what felt like forever. The hot air inside the shed grew heavy, and the sunlight coming through the gaps flickered like the rhythm of time running out. Luna's strength was fading, but she refused to stop. Far away, Ethan, sitting in his truck, suddenly felt uneasy. He didn't know why, but his chest tightened as if something was wrong. He checked his watch and decided to hurry home sooner than planned. He started the truck again, his heart pounding for no reason he could explain. Back at the farm, the python's grip weakened for a moment. Luna took the chance. She lunged forward with all the power she had left, dragging herself free of the coils. She staggered toward her puppies, breathing hard, every step painful. But before she could reach them, the python moved again. It didn't give up easily. It struck once more, wrapping around her legs. Luna fell to the side, barking wildly, the sound filled with both fear and fury. She bit again, refusing to let the creature come near her puppies. The noise echoed faintly outside, carried by the wind, but too faint for human ears to notice. Finally exhausted, Luna collapsed against the straw. Her sides rose and fell rapidly. The python coiled again, but slower this time, uncertain. It had been hurt by her bites. The air was tense, silent except for the sound of her ragged breathing. The sun was lowering now, shadows stretching long across the field. The day that had begun in peace was ending in struggle. Luna's strength was nearly gone, but her eyes stayed open, fixed on the corner where her puppies lay. They were safe for now. That was all that mattered. Outside, the sound of a small drone buzzed faintly in the distance. A young boy from the neighboring farm was flying it for fun, unaware that his camera was about to capture something unbelievable. The fight was not over. Help was on its way, but Luna didn't know that yet. She only knew one thing: she would never stop fighting for her little ones, no matter the cost. The afternoon sun had started to soften, casting long golden rays across the wide fields. The farm looked peaceful from a distance, but inside the old wooden shed the air was heavy with fear. Luna lay weak and trembling on the straw floor, still fighting against the giant python that had wrapped its coils around her again. Her puppies whimpered softly in the corner, their tiny bodies pressed close together. The world outside went on quietly, unaware that inside that shed, a life and death struggle was still unfolding. In the neighboring field, a young boy named Milo sat on a wooden fence post. holding the small controller of his toy drone. He loved flying it after school, using the tiny camera to explore the sky and see the world from above. His father, Tom, was working near the barn, fixing an old tractor tire. Milo had been filming the cows and fields when something strange caught his eye on the drone's screen. He saw movement near Ethan's farm, a place just down the dirt road. At first it looked like a patch of straw moving, but then the shape shifted. Milo leaned closer to the screen. The drone camera wasn't very sharp, but it showed the inside of the shed through the half-open door. Something large and brown was struggling against a long, dark shape. Milo squinted, his heart beginning to beat faster. Then he realized what he was seeing. "Dad!" he shouted, jumping off the fence. "Dad, come quick!" "Something's happening at Mr. Ethan's farm." Tom wiped his hands on a rag and looked up. "What is it, son?" "There's a big snake like a huge one inside the dog's shed. I saw it on the drone." Milo's voice shook as he spoke, his finger pointing toward the small screen. Tom frowned and took the controller. He peered at the footage. It was shaky, but he could see enough. A large snake coiled around something brown and moving. "Good Lord," he whispered. He had known Luna since Ethan first moved to the area. She had always been friendly, guarding the property but wagging her tail when neighbors visited. The idea that she was in danger made his chest tighten. He didn't hesitate. "Get in the truck, Milo," he said quickly. The boy ran toward the pickup while Tom grabbed a long wooden rake leaning by the barn door. His hands trembled slightly as he started the engine. Gravel and dust flew as they sped toward Ethan's property. Meanwhile, inside the shed, Luna could barely move. Her breathing was shallow, but her eyes were still open, watching over her puppies. The snake had loosened slightly, saving its energy, its head resting near her shoulder. It was waiting, patient, confident in its strength. Luna's fur was damp with sweat and dust, but her spirit had not given up. She blinked slowly, her gaze never leaving the small bundle of life she had sworn to protect. The rumble of Tom's truck grew louder in the distance. The snake lifted its head slightly at the vibration, its tongue flicking in the air. Luna heard it too. She turned her head weakly, her ears twitching. Help was coming, though she didn't know it yet. Tom and Milo pulled up to the farmhouse. The door was locked and Ethan's truck was gone. "He's not home," Tom said, jumping out. He could hear faint sounds from the back, small whimpers, a bark, and something scraping against wood. "This way." They ran toward the shed, the grass brushing against their legs. Milo kept the drone hovering above them, filming the scene as they moved. His hands shook, but he didn't stop. When Tom reached the shed, he froze for a second. Through the open door, he saw the giant python, its thick body wrapped around Luna's chest. The sight made his heart pound. He had seen snakes before, but never one this massive. "Oh no," he whispered. Luna lifted her head weakly when she saw them. Her eyes widened and she gave a faint bark, as if begging for help. Tom didn't think twice. He handed Milo his phone. "Stay back and don't move," he said firmly. "Keep that drone up. If I need to, I'll tell you what to do." Milo nodded, his voice small. "Dad, be careful." Tom stepped into the shed, the smell of straw and dust filling his lungs. The python turned its head toward him, its eyes cold and black. It hissed softly, a warning. Tom gripped the rake with both hands, his knuckles white. "All right," he muttered to himself. "Let's see if you like this." He swung the rake forward, aiming at the snake's body. The wooden handle hit the scales with a dull thud. The python hissed louder and started to tighten around Luna again. She let out a weak cry, her paws scratching the floor. Tom's heart raced. He jabbed the rake again, harder this time, trying to wedge it between the coils. "Come on, let her go," he shouted. Sweat ran down his face as he struggled to pull the snake's body apart. It was like trying to move a heavy log that refused to budge. Milo, standing at the door, looked around desperately. "Dad, water!" he shouted suddenly. "Snakes hate water." He remembered something his teacher once said. Without waiting, he ran to the old water trough beside the barn, grabbed a metal bucket and filled it as quickly as he could. Tom kept fighting. "Hurry, Milo," he yelled. The snake turned toward him, its head rising, ready to strike. Just then Milo burst back into the shed, water sloshing from the bucket. He threw it forward with all his strength. The cold water splashed over the snake's head and body. The python jerked in surprise, its grip loosening just enough. Luna gasped for air, coughing weakly. Tom didn't waste a second. He jammed the rake handle under one of the coils and pulled hard. "Come on," he grunted, using all his strength. The snake twisted and hissed again, but the water had distracted it. Finally, one of the coils slipped loose. Luna stumbled forward, collapsing onto her side. "Good girl, you're okay," Tom said softly, though his voice trembled. He kept the rake pressed against the snake's head, keeping it pinned to the floor. The python's tail thrashed, knocking over a bucket and scattering straw everywhere. Milo stood frozen, tears in his eyes. "Dad, is she alive?" "Yes," Tom said, glancing at Luna, who was breathing heavily but still moving. "She's alive." He took a step back, keeping his eyes on the snake. "We're not done yet," he muttered. He waved the rake, pushing the python toward the door. The snake hesitated, its black eyes unblinking. Then slowly it began to retreat, sliding its long body across the floor and out into the grass. It moved toward the forest, its massive form vanishing into the shadows from where it came. Tom exhaled deeply, finally lowering the rake. His arms ached and his shirt was soaked with sweat. He knelt beside Luna, speaking gently. "You're safe now, girl. You're safe." Luna looked at him weakly, her tail twitching once. She lifted her head just enough to lick his hand, a soft whine escaping her throat. Her eyes were full of exhaustion and gratitude. Milo ran inside and knelt beside her puppies. "They're okay too, Dad," he said, his voice trembling but relieved. "They're all okay." Tom smiled faintly, his hands still shaking. "You did good, son. Really good." Outside, the drone still hovered, its small camera recording everything: the bravery of a father and son, the rescue of a loyal dog, and the quiet heroism that would soon become a story everyone would talk about. Minutes later, Ethan's truck appeared at the end of the road. He had driven faster than usual, that strange worry still sitting heavy in his chest. When he saw Tom's truck parked near the shed and his dog lying on the ground, his heart stopped for a moment. He jumped out and ran toward them. Tom stood up and waved him over. "She's all right, Ethan," he said. "We got here just in time." Ethan knelt beside Luna, tears welling in his eyes. "Oh, girl," he whispered, stroking her head gently. "I'm so sorry I wasn't here." Luna licked his hand weakly, her tail brushing the ground. Her puppies began to crawl toward her again, climbing onto her paws, safe and warm. Tom placed a comforting hand on Ethan's shoulder. "You've got one brave dog," he said quietly. "And one lucky farm." Ethan nodded, unable to speak for a moment. He looked at Tom and Milo and said, "You two saved her. I don't know how I'll ever thank you." Milo smiled shyly, still holding the drone controller. "Luna's a hero too," he said softly. Ethan looked at the shed, the broken straw and the marks on the ground where the snake had been. The danger had passed, but the memory of it would stay forever. Luna, tired but alive, lay surrounded by her puppies, safe at last because someone cared enough to act. The golden light of the setting sun filled the shed, painting everything in a warm, peaceful glow. The long day had finally found its ending, a story of courage, loyalty, and unexpected heroes. The air around the farm was heavy with tension and relief at the same time. The late afternoon sun painted the fields gold, and the cries of Luna's puppies filled the shed softly. The danger had just passed, but everyone's hearts were still pounding. Luna was alive, but she was weak and trembling. Her breathing was rough and her sides rose and fell in short gasps. Tom and Milo stood beside her, still trying to understand what had just happened. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, his eyes wide with disbelief as he looked at the marks on the ground. The straw was flattened where the snake had coiled itself, and one of the buckets was knocked over. He kneeled down beside Luna, whispering, "You're safe now, girl. You're safe." Luna blinked slowly, her eyes soft and tired. She rested her head against his knee. Her puppies crawled around her, squeaking softly, unaware of how close they had all come to danger. Ethan brushed the dirt from her fur and looked at Tom. "You saved her," he said quietly. "If you hadn't come when you did," Tom shook his head. "We were lucky Milo saw it. That drone of his was worth something after all." Milo stood a few feet away, still holding the small controller. His face was pale, his hands trembling, but his eyes were bright. He had never seen anything like that in his life. He stepped closer, staring at Luna and the little pups. "She's really strong," he whispered. "She sure is," Ethan said, smiling faintly. "She fought till the very end." The wind carried a soft rustling sound through the open doorway. All three turned instinctively. The forest beyond the field stood still and quiet again. There was no sign of the python now. It had retreated back into the trees, disappearing as silently as it had come. But the thought of it still made Ethan's stomach twist. Tom looked at him seriously. "You'll want to close off this place better. That thing could come back." Ethan nodded, glancing at the broken door hinge. "I will. Tonight I'll fix it. I'll put in metal bars and keep lights on out here." He paused for a moment, then added softly, "I just can't believe something like that came this close." Tom sighed, wiping his forehead. These wild things sometimes wander far when they're hungry. But what matters is, she's alive. Ethan looked at Luna again. Her tail thumped weakly on the straw, her eyes half closed but peaceful. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Thanks to you both." Milo crouched down near the puppies, watching one try to climb onto Luna's paw. "They're cute," he said softly, a small smile on his face. Luna lifted her head and gave a soft, tired bark, as if acknowledging his words. As the light began to fade, Ethan brought out a clean towel and a bowl of water. He soaked the towel and gently wiped the dust and straw from Luna's fur. She flinched once or twice, but she stayed still. The water darkened quickly with dirt. "You did good, girl," he whispered again and again. Tom leaned against the doorway, watching the scene quietly. He felt a deep respect for both the man and the dog. "You know," he said after a moment, "not many animals would fight like that. Most would have run." Ethan nodded, smiling faintly. "She's not like most. She'd protect those pups even if it meant her life." Luna turned her head slightly at the sound of his voice. Her eyes met his, and for a long moment there was a quiet understanding between them, one that didn't need words. By the time the sun began to set, Ethan had made Luna as comfortable as possible. He spread fresh hay in the corner and moved the puppies closer to her side. Tom helped patch the shed door temporarily with an extra plank he found leaning against the wall. As they worked, Milo wandered toward the small stream that ran behind the property. The water sparkled orange under the fading sunlight. He knelt by the edge, still thinking about what he had seen. His heart was still beating fast. The image of the snake and Luna's struggle wouldn't leave his mind. It had been both terrifying and brave, like something out of a movie. Tom called out to him. "Come on, son. Time to head back soon." Milo stood and ran back, his shoes splashing in the damp grass. He didn't want to leave yet, but he nodded. "Can I come back tomorrow to see her?" he asked Ethan hopefully. Ethan smiled. "Of course. She'll be happy to see you." As Tom and Milo drove away, the sound of their truck faded into the distance. The sky turned soft purple and the first stars began to appear. Ethan stayed by Luna's side, keeping a lantern lit beside her. The soft glow filled the shed with warm light. The puppies slept soundly, their small bodies rising and falling in rhythm with their mother's breathing. Ethan sat on the floor, leaning against the wall, exhaustion catching up to him. He couldn't stop replaying what Tom had said. The thought that Luna could have been gone if they had been a few minutes later made his chest tighten. He reached out and rested a hand on her paw. "You're one tough girl," he said softly. Luna gave a faint wag of her tail in reply. Outside, the forest seemed calm again, but the events of the day had changed everything. Ethan decided he would install motion sensors and a new fence around the shed. He wouldn't take any chances again. Hours passed and the crickets began to sing. The night air grew cool. Luna finally drifted into a deep sleep. Her body relaxed for the first time in hours. Ethan dozed off beside her, his head resting against the wall. Somewhere in the forest, an owl hooted. The stars spread wide across the sky, and the whole world seemed to pause after the chaos of the afternoon. In the morning, sunlight poured through the cracks of the shed again. The air was fresh and the smell of dew filled the farm. Luna stirred, blinking awake. Her body ached, but she felt stronger. Her puppies crawled toward her, climbing over each other, hungry for milk. She let them feed quietly, her eyes half closed. Ethan woke soon after, stretching and rubbing his eyes. When he saw Luna sitting up again, he smiled wide. "Hey, look who's back on her feet," he said warmly. He filled a bowl with food and placed it near her. She began to eat slowly, her tail thumping softly on the ground. Later that morning, Tom and Milo returned. Milo carried a small bag of treats he had begged his dad to buy on the way. As soon as he stepped into the shed, Luna wagged her tail and barked once, a low, friendly sound. "See," Milo said proudly. "She remembers me." "She won't forget you," Ethan said, smiling. "You helped save her life." Tom walked around the shed, checking the repairs. I brought some stronger boards, he said. We'll reinforce this today. Together, he and Ethan began to rebuild the shed door, nailing in fresh wood and adding metal latches. Milo sat beside Luna the whole time, gently patting her head. The puppies, curious and playful, sniffed at his shoes and tried to climb onto his lap. He laughed quietly, petting each one. As the hours passed, the shed transformed into a safer, brighter space. Ethan hung a lantern above the doorway and fixed a wire fence around the outside. When they finished, he stepped back and looked at it proudly. No snakes getting through that, he said. Tom nodded, smiling. Looks solid. She's got her fortress now. The day went on peacefully. Luna regained her strength, walking slowly around the shed to stretch her legs. The puppies followed her clumsily, tumbling over each other. Milo laughed every time one rolled into the hay. The dark memory of the python began to fade, replaced by warmth, laughter, and life. Before leaving, Tom placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. You've got good friends here, Ethan. Don't ever hesitate to call if you need help again. Ethan nodded. I won't, and thank you, both of you. Milo waved at Luna one last time. Bye, Luna. See you tomorrow. Luna barked softly, her tail wagging. She watched the truck drive away, then turned her head toward her puppies who had fallen asleep in a pile again. She lay down beside them, eyes gentle and full of peace. Ethan stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her. The sun dipped low again, lighting the farm in a soft golden glow. The fear of yesterday was gone. In its place was a quiet gratitude that filled the air like warmth after a storm. Luna had fought for her family and others had fought for her. Together they had turned a moment of danger into a story of courage and care, one that would never be forgotten. The sun was bright again the next morning, warming the fields and drying the dew that covered the grass. The smell of hay drifted from the barn, and the farm was alive with calm sounds. The clucking of hens, the creak of wooden fences, the soft barks of puppies waking up. Inside the shed, Luna lay resting, her 5 little ones snuggled beside her. She looked much better now. Her eyes were no longer tired and her breathing had returned to normal. When Ethan opened the door, she lifted her head, tail thumping gently on the straw-covered floor. Ethan smiled as he stepped inside with a bowl of food and fresh water. Morning, girl, he said softly. You scared me half to death, you know that? Luna tilted her head as if she understood, and he laughed quietly. But you made it, didn't you? You're one tough mother. He placed the bowl down and Luna began to eat slowly. The puppies squeaked, crawling over her legs, tumbling one on top of another. Ethan knelt down, brushing a hand across their soft fur. You little ones owe your mama everything, he murmured with a smile. After breakfast, he checked the repairs around the shed. The new boards Tom helped install were strong and secure. The small gaps between the wooden planks had been sealed, and a sturdy latch locked the door firmly. A new motion light hung outside that would flick on if anything moved nearby. Ethan felt calmer knowing Luna and her babies were safe now. A few hours later, the sound of a truck came rolling down the road. Luna's ears perked up. She barked once, her tail wagging. Ethan looked out through the window and smiled. Looks like your friends are back. Tom and Milo stepped out of the truck, both carrying small boxes. Morning, Tom called. We brought some extra fencing and something special for Luna. Milo grinned as he ran ahead, waving a bright red collar in his hand. Look what I got for her. He knelt beside Luna, who wagged her tail excitedly. He gently placed the collar around her neck. It had a shiny silver tag that read, Luna, our brave girl. Ethan's eyes softened. That's beautiful, he said. She deserves it. Tom set down his toolbox and began adding the last touches to the outer fence, securing it tightly into the ground. He glanced toward the trees. That forest is quiet today, he said, but better safe than sorry. Ethan nodded. I'm planning to clear the grass around the edges, too. If anything ever comes near again, I'll see it sooner. Milo stayed near Luna, playing with the puppies. They climbed over his shoes, biting his shoelaces gently and barking in their tiny voices. He laughed, trying to pet all of them at once. They're growing fast, he said. They'll be running around before you know it, Ethan replied, smiling. And probably chewing up everything in sight. As the sun climbed higher, Ethan brought out lemonade for everyone. The 3 of them sat by the fence, sipping their drinks while watching Luna stretch in the sunlight. She looked peaceful, lying on the grass, her puppies crawling over her back. Her fur shone golden under the light. You know, Tom said after a while. Word's getting around about what happened. My wife told the folks in town and everyone's talking about Luna's bravery. Ethan chuckled softly. She's becoming a local hero, huh? She deserves to be, Tom said. Not every dog would fight a snake that size. And that boy of mine can't stop talking about her. Milo grinned. She's my favorite dog now, he said proudly. Luna barked in response as if agreeing. Later that day, a few neighbors stopped by after hearing the story. They brought extra straw, some food, and even small blankets for the puppies. Everyone wanted to see the brave German shepherd who had protected her young from a python. Luna sat near the door, tail wagging, calm and friendly as people admired her and her pups. An old woman from the village, Mrs. Dawson, patted Luna's head and said, "You're a good mother, dear. The best kind of guardian." She looked at Ethan and added, "You take care of her well, son. She's special." "I will," Ethan promised. That evening, after everyone left, the farm returned to quiet again. The sun was setting, painting the sky with orange and pink colors. The air was cooler, and the soft sound of crickets began to rise. Ethan sat on the front steps, looking toward the shed. Luna was lying inside, surrounded by her sleeping puppies. He felt peace settle deep inside him. He thought about how easily things could have gone differently. If Milo hadn't seen what was happening, if Tom hadn't come so quickly, Luna might not have survived. The thought made him shiver. He looked up at the stars starting to appear and whispered, "Thank you." The next morning, Ethan drove into town with Luna sitting beside him in the truck. The puppies were too small to travel, so they stayed in the care of Tom and Milo for the day. Luna loved the ride, her head out the window, her ears flapping in the wind. People in town recognized her right away. Some waved, others came to pat her head and tell her she was brave. At the small animal clinic, the veterinarian checked her over carefully. "She's healing well," the vet said with a smile. "A few bruises, but nothing serious." "She's one lucky dog," Ethan nodded. "Luck and a lot of heart." When they returned home, Tom and Milo were already waiting. Milo ran forward as soon as the truck stopped. "Luna, you went to the doctor, right? Are you okay?" Luna jumped out of the truck, wagging her tail and barking happily. She ran to Milo, licking his hands. The boy laughed. "See, Dad? She's fine." "She sure is," Tom said, smiling. "Stronger than ever." Over the next few weeks, the puppies grew quickly. They opened their eyes, began to walk, and barked louder every day. Milo came to visit them almost daily, helping feed them and letting them chase after his shoes. He even gave them names: Scout, Daisy, Max, Tiny, and Shadow. Luna watched them proudly, her eyes full of peace. As time passed, the memory of the python faded into a story people told whenever they gathered at the local diner or feed store. "Remember the day Luna fought the snake?" someone would say, and everyone would nod and smile. It became more than just a scary event. It became a tale of courage, love, and community. One afternoon, Ethan, Tom, and Milo sat on the porch with cups of coffee and lemonade. The puppies played nearby, tumbling in the grass. Luna lay in the shade, her head resting on her paws. The farm looked alive again, full of laughter and motion. "You know," Ethan said quietly, "that day changed everything. It reminded me that kindness still exists, that people still help each other when it matters." Tom nodded slowly. "That's what neighbors are for," he said. "You'd have done the same for us." Milo looked up from the puppies and said softly, "I think Luna's an angel." Ethan smiled, watching the loyal dog who had risked her life for her babies. "You might be right, kid." That evening, as the sky turned dark and stars appeared, Ethan went to the shed one last time before bed. Luna was lying there peacefully, her puppies curled up beside her. He knelt beside her and whispered, "Sleep well, brave girl." She opened her eyes for a moment, gave a quiet wag of her tail, and rested her head again. The wind outside was gentle, carrying the smell of hay and clean earth. The lights around the shed glowed softly, keeping the darkness at bay. Everything felt safe again. Days turned into weeks, and soon the puppies were old enough to explore the fields. Luna walked beside them, guiding and watching every step they took. Her body bore faint scars, but her spirit was unbroken. She had become not just a mother to her pups, but a symbol of love and bravery for everyone who knew her. Sometimes, Ethan would look at her from the porch and think about how life had a way of testing courage in unexpected ways. Luna had faced hers without fear, and in doing so, she had brought people together, The boy with the drone, the neighbor with the rake, and the man who loved her like family. It became a story told with pride for years to come, the story of Luna, the German shepherd mother who fought a giant python to save her children, and of the people who came running when she needed them most. Every time the wind blew softly across the fields and the puppies barked in the distance, Ethan would smile and say to himself, "That's the sound of home, and it's all thanks to her." The farm never forgot that day. Neither did the town, and Luna, with her red collar shining in the sun, lived on as the bravest mother anyone had ever known.